And our guest is Sean Randolph, who is the president of the Bay Area Council Economic Institute. And we're going to talk about, we enjoyed our last conversation. We're going to talk a little bit more about what we're going through in the larger picture. There was a great movie, as you know, Being There, with Peter Sellers.
Love that one.
And you remember that time when the president's meeting with his benefactor, and they turned to him and asked him, what do you think of the economy? Remember? And he said, well, first comes spring, then comes summer, and then winter. And in other words, it's a natural cycle. And, of course, the president goes on to use it.
They're very impressed.
in a major economic speech. But there's some truth to the fact that there are cycles that are natural and healthy. Now, let's talk about this one. This is the housing cycle.
Right.
First of all, before we get into the positive side, is there a chance that we reach the point where everyone said, okay, we got to clean this up. This is getting out of hand. And all the big powers to be have gotten together and said, let's end this. And they have ways of ending it. And do you think that's going on right now?
I think they're trying to do that. I think there's a real concern right now in the financial community, concentrated in the Fed, with the fact that the mortgage crisis, which has become the credit crisis, has spread to virtually the entire range of financial institutions in the U.S. It's not just mortgages anymore. It's the Bear Stearns of the world. It's the banks. It's foreign banks. All the stuff that was securitized is showing up all over the map, and then the implications are showing up with consumer activity. So I think their concern is that they need to get this under control right now, because it's spread so broadly that if they don't, things could potentially be very bad. Hopefully not, but I think they are trying to do that thing of getting people in the room and playing every card they can as quickly as they can to forestall things going the wrong direction.
And when we talk about California, especially when we talk about the Bay Area, everyone in the world knows about the values, the median price of housing in the Bay Area, okay? Yeah. We begin with that. Now, here's the crisis in housing, and here's an area that has the highest median average in the country, if not the world. Does that mean that we are susceptible to something as a fallout if they don't solve this problem rapidly enough, because of so much wealth in our homes in the Bay Area?
You know, I think the financial market issues are bigger than the housing market issues. And I think we're seeing right now houses in the core of the Bay Area, where there hasn't been a lot of new construction, largely holding their value. Houses in the periphery dropping in value. I'd be surprised if that pattern didn't continue to hold. The latest figures I've seen said that housing prices statewide the median prices dropped in the last year about 22%. It's only dropped 11% in the Bay Area. And that's a lot, but it's half of what it is in the rest of the state. So on average, our values are holding their own relatively well. The affordability of houses here, depending when you ask, the number changes, but let's say a year ago if it was about 25% of people could afford the median home. Well, the latest number I saw was 35 or 36%.
That's significant.
That's significant. That counts for something. Now, the issue for people buying houses is the national average is more like 60%. So it is still a very unaffordable area for most people, but that is a significant movement in the affordability index, which has the opportunity, if they can get the credit.
Right. Now, that's where the two worlds meet. So why don't you and I just kind of go over that again? And let's see if we got this straight. There are really two crises going on. One, it has to do with the credit markets, and the other one is the fear that where the world of the consumer is. I mean, right. Where they meet is where they try to get an auto loan, buy a house, and so on. So now that the houses are more affordable, the question is, the banks who are over in this other world where they don't trust each other, and they're fearful to make loans to each other, are just as fearful to make loans to consumers now, either because the feds might come in or because they might lose money. So when does that start to loosen up? When and how quickly, if they can solve this problem over here among themselves, can consumers start to get loans, good loans, with 10%, 20% down, and with income verification? and the kinds of things you do. When do you think that will come back to the market?
You know, I'm not really sure. The Fed is playing a very strong hand right now in trying to inject as much liquidity into the market as possible, especially the housing market, so that's going to start to move. But their tools, you know, they can't force the banks to loosen up. Those are business decisions.
Correct.
The problem is if you've got good credit and you can come in with a 20-25% down, you've got a loan, but a lot of people can't. And if there's any credit question at all, you're not likely to get the loan. So a lot of people are affected by that. And that's really where the rubber's going to meet the road for the next few months.
That's what I'm wondering, though.
Yeah.
I mean, in your opinion, how quickly can the restoration of trust among banks themselves or other financial institutions lead to a loosening up of credit for especially first-time owners? Obviously,
in theory, it could be quickly. It could be 2 or 3 months, which is pretty fast.
Because home sales number of sales is down significantly.
Way down.
While the price has only dropped 11%, sales are significantly down.
Yeah, they're more down 20% or more.
Or more.
Yeah. So I mean, not in the Bay Area. Well, actually, in parts of the Bay Area they are. So you're right that because a lot of the lower value houses dropped out of the market, the remaining sales, fewer in number, tend to be the higher value homes. That tends to keep the median price pretty high.
Yes.
But that doesn't reflect what's happening in the rest of the market.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's the big question. I don't think anybody knows what the banks are going to do, except that the big concern is to get that liquidity out into the market and get the money in the hands of consumers, you know, through loans for mortgages and other things. And it's just real tight now, and it's really in the bank's hands.
What do you think your colleagues and you, truthfully, if you were forced, when you look at what's happening on Wall Street and what their attempts to solve their problems, and how you look at the California and the Bay Area economy, which is your job, you and your colleagues at Stockton and UCLA and so on, what's the consensus of how long it will be before we'll have a more stabilized market?
Well, if there's betting on it, it's not going to look a whole lot better for the rest of this year. I think things might stabilize at a low level, but I don't think anybody really believes you're going to see a return to what we would consider healthy market conditions and a significant upturn in prices and a significant upturn in sales until at least the end of this year and maybe into 2009. One of the issues out there on the horizon is actually we haven't seen the biggest tranche of subprimes come due yet. The biggest spike in those is going to be late summer, August, September. Huge tranche going to come due. And so we got to get over that peak, or at least know how to deal with it before we hit it, before we can really look at how things are going to stabilize.
And by that you mean a whole group of people are going to see their interest rates adjusted.
The dates of adjustment are a matter of record.
And
there's going to be a
big
big wave coming
hit
up.
in the summer.
Late summer.
Including in California. And including the Bay Area.
You bet. Yeah.
Now, the other aspect besides the existing sales, of course, is new sales and new construction. That means there'll be even more homes on the market in foreclosure and held by banks. So when you look at that crystal ball in terms of the revitalization of that important industry in California, the construction industry, residential construction, how long do you think it will take the inventory to be all sold?
A long, long time. I could only guess, but we may be looking at 2010 before you really start to work off that inventory. There's a big inventory out there. Construction has stopped in a lot of places, but you'd have to have a very, very strong economic pickup sustained for quite a while to burn that off to the point where you can really start to incentivize new construction.
And it is important, isn't it? The construction industry.
A very significant part of the economic growth in California in the last 2 to 3 to 4 years has been in construction, primarily home construction. We've had a boom in it throughout the state. Again, it's not happening in San Mateo County so much, but the Central Valley, Sacramento, the East Bay, yeah.
Certainly in northern Contra Costa County.
Exactly.
That all
Solano,
a lot of Solano opened up.
Exactly so. And you go to Fresno, you go to the Inland Empire in Southern California, Sacramento, That's really where you've seen the greatest development of that, the corridor going between here and Sacramento.
I saw an article yesterday. You remember we were talking at the beginning of the program, things seem just to come around and go around, like Peter Sellers said. Do you remember in the last cycle, it was all about the condos in Florida and so on, all those thousands and thousands of condos. Yesterday was the first time I saw an article talking about all these condos in San Francisco and in San Diego, but the word came back. It was like an eerie reverberation of that era. What do you think about all that, all these urban condos in Oakland, San Francisco, San Diego, even Los Angeles? Are they going to be able to withstand this? Is that just a different market altogether, or what?
Well, it is a different market. I tend to think they will withstand it pretty well. You still have a lot of higher income people here who have the wherewithal to buy those. You have people whose kids have left for school and they've got their suburban houses with a lot of equity in them,
inside,
who could want to come back in the city. You have, and I wish I knew the percentage, but a significant percentage of those being bought by people from other countries. It's relatively cheap with the dollar being what it is, and there's a lot of wealth overseas.
And there's a lot of people, a lot of time sharing going on in those, where 6 or 7 people are really buying it for a month out of the year. It's a big market.
Now, to the extent that it's investors buying them as investment properties, you may have some issues, but again, there's quite a bit of overseas money coming into those, which I think insulates it to some degree from what's happening in the rest of the market.
Okay, in the last 2 minutes, we go back to where we started, that every one of these downturns has resulted in something positive for the economy. We don't go back to where we were.
Yeah.
We move forward. That's how the circle works. In the last minute or two, when we come out of all this, will we have learned anything? Will things have changed and have we become a stronger economy in the Bay Area, or are we just destined to repeat this probably another 10 years from now?
Well, being an optimist or a pessimist, I'm not sure about human nature. I kind of think we're doomed to do this again and again and again. Not this exact scenario, but we've seen going back into the 1800s and 1700s in Europe, cycles after cycles. It was .com, it was railroads, it
tulips,
was internet, tulips, you name it. So there will be another cycle sometime. It won't be mortgages, it'll be something else. But I think coming out of this particular one, and hopefully if we have a recession, it's going to be shallow, we hope, there would hopefully be more affordable housing on the market and more liquidity to get that housing, but on more responsible terms for a while at least. So maybe we soften some of the edge of the very high housing prices here in the Bay Area. In the meantime, we've got some great things going for us. Again, we've got a great export engine here. We've got some new industries coming up. I think the green tech, clean tech, maybe that's going to be a bubble someday. But that does promise to be a very big industry for the Bay Area, source of growth. So we got a lot of assets to work with. We just have to invest in them properly and work our way through the excesses we had in the mortgage market the last few years.
Sean Randolph, I think that's a very balanced, optimistic point of view.
Trying to be optimistic.
Okay.
I am.
Thanks for being with us.
Sure thing, Art.